What?
From ants to wasps and everything in between, welcome to Does It Bite, the podcast that makes pests less pesky.
That's
you didn't
pretty
think
good.
I could do it, did you?
That's pretty good.
So that's your first clue to what we're going to talk about today. I'm Stephanie here with Michael. We're from Bug Tech, and this is Does It Bite, the podcast, all things pests and pest management.
That's right.
Yeah. So today, as spring is nearing, I want to talk about swarm season. What is that, and what pests does that involve?
Oh man, swarm season. That's the cue for all pest control companies.
Okay.
To come out of hibernation.
Like the pests themselves.
Yes, and we get to work.
Because it takes one to know one, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, I mean, we're a pest. That's what my wife calls me. But anyway, we that's the time where we get started.
Okay.
That's the time of year where we know, hey, it's season time. You know,
all right.
when we hit swarming season, that's when all the guns are let loose and we go to work.
So does swarming mean that those are flying pests?
It can be yes and no.
Okay.
So swarming season to the pest control world means this is where we start getting active pests.
Okay.
So not only are they're flying, but they're more active now.
Okay, gotcha.
So now we have more activity with mosquitoes. We have more activity with ants. We have more activity with roaches, especially swarming season where we really connect with is termites.
Yes.
And also, our pollinators. So our bees, our wasps. So that's where we really get going again.
So as a homeowner, what are some things that I can do to prevent some of these pests in and around my home, like the ants, the wasps?
The biggest thing is to have
termites.
Yeah, the biggest thing is to have pest control during the wintertime.
Okay.
Because a lot of folks believe that, hey, it's cold outside,
right.
There's no pest movement and all that, but there still is. There's still some pest movement. We still have ants that are kind of hibernating, kind of in the ground doing their thing. But as soon as spring hits, they're going to start moving.
Right.
And it's when you try to wait to that moment to get your pest control done, it's almost a little bit too late.
Okay.
So that's why we sign people up on quarterly services, monthly services, bi-monthly services, just so we can keep some active pesticide on the ground in the area. So when they do start, boom, they still run into our chemical and eventually die off because we're ready for them. Now, if you're sitting there waiting for them, they're going to take over and they'll take over pretty quick.
So let's talk about wasps first.
Okay.
How do you keep them from nesting? What are some common areas? And when does that happen? Is that in the spring also?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
So that's when our pollinators really start taking off. Because during the wintertime, wasps don't like cold weather. So they're going to be more into, hanging out in tree stumps and stuff like that, kind of riding out the winter storm. But when that sun comes up.
Because they go kind of dormant, don't they, in the winter? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you get real sluggish? Because I've run into some of them and they're not active. I don't worry. You don't worry so much about, them chasing you down and stinging you.
Right. But during the springtime, that's when they really get moving. So they're coming out, they're starting to feed, and they're starting to pollinate.
Okay.
So they're going to start moving towards finding places to build their nests.
Gotcha.
Again. So a lot of places that they'll build their nests in on the soffits or the eaves of the home, anywhere like windows where they can really hang. So here in Lubbock, we have paper wasps. So paper wasps are what we really deal with here. Now, we do have mud daubers and we do have the hornet killer, but that is not as prevalent as the paper wasps.
Okay.
The paper wasps are the ones that you see kind of floating around, and they're the ones that build those nests. That have the little holes and stuff in them. So that's who we're dealing with. So to keep them away from your house is to, when you see them start to build a nest, to knock the nest down.
Okay.
There's a lot of chemicals out there that you can use to spray the nest before you mess with it. My thing is best to call a pest control.
Yeah, I'm not going to knock down a wasp nest, even if they're dormant.
Yeah, it's best to call a pest management
So
guy.
what do you guys do if we've got a situation like that?
Yeah, so a lot of times for us, we love wasps. You know, it's
you love roaches and you love wasps, Michael.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's funny because
you love all the most unlovable things in this world, don't you?
It keeps me in a job. So wasps are for us is pretty easy to handle.
Okay.
Because we have the equipment and the chemicals and the things that we need to take care of them.
Right.
Pretty quick and not as harmful.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend a homeowner trying to take care of a huge wasp nest by themselves because once the agitation pheromone or the attack pheromone is released, they will hunt you down to protect their nest.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why when you call a pest control professional, we know how to handle that, get it down safely, and, you know, make sure that we take care of our customer that way. If you enjoyed this episode of Does It Bite, please remember to like and subscribe.
So wasps get active in the spring. And then we also talked about ants and termites, which both fly. And sometimes it's hard to know which is which.
That's
so
right.
What do you see in the springtime in terms of those things? And as a homeowner, what should I be watching for?
You went deep on that one.
I know. And I'm a big compound question asker, so I'm really glad you'll be able to keep up.
Yeah. That's a deep question. So, you know, so we have ants and we have termites. Okay. Now, they do fly at the swarming stage. Okay. At the second reproductive stage. So what happens is that all these guys are crawling around and things like this. So what happens is that the termite knows when the barometric pressure drops. And it's time for a well-established colony to send out their secondary reproductives. Those termites transform into a swarming termite. So now it develops wings, it turns black, and it goes out to find a second colony to start. Same thing with ants. Ants do the same thing. So especially harvester ants in this area. Harvester ants will have a well-maintained colony, and then once they figure out the barometric pressure is dropping, it's time for them to swarm, usually right before it rains. Now, both termites and ants both do this. Right before it rains, their barometric pressure drops, and they send out their secondary swarmers. Those swarmers will go out to start another colony. So that's why they swarm.
And you can actually see those in your yard, right?
Oh yeah. Now, termites are weak flyers. When they fly, they get kind of carried by the wind. They're very weak. You can just, you know, but you'll see a bunch of them. If you have an active colony nearby, you will see a lot.
So if you see that, you need to call.
Yes.
You need to call, you better call Bug Tech.
Yes, because you might have an active colony at your house or near your home. So it's best to get it treated or do a preventative treatment because those termites are looking for another home. Ants are the same way. So if you see a whole bunch of ants do a thing called hill hopping. Hill hopping is where the ants will go to the highest structure in the area and mate in that highest structure. So we find them in trees, homes, businesses, where there's thousands of ants that are just attacked.
And they're up high because they've flown.
Yeah, they fly. Yes. So the male and females will get up there, they'll fly, and they'll mate. The females' wings will fall off, and then they'll crawl to try to find another colony. The males will die. So, but it's crazy to see because it's not just like maybe 100, 200 ants that are doing this. This is a major swarm where there's thousands of ants. And when we get those calls where people are freaking out because there's thousands of ants on their home. There's thousands of ants on top of the roof. And it's so cool to see. We did one that was on top of a church. And the air conditioner guy went up there to fix it, and he would not go up there because of the thousands of ants that were on top of this roof. So we get up there, and we had to climb like this straight ladder up with our backpack spurs on and stuff.
You're
and
like
we get
the
up there.
Spider-Man of pest control.
I mean, it's cool. Isn't it ironic? It's very ironic.
It really is.
So we get up there, and there's thousands of these things just crawling everywhere. They're falling through the door that leads up to the ceiling. They're falling on the ground. I mean, they're just everywhere. So we get up there, we just go to work and take them all out. But it's amazing to see hill hopping. It's
Wow.
great.
So tell us a little bit more about how you treat these mega infestations.
Yes. So with ants, they're more of a contact kill. So we're going to go after, when they're hill hopping, we'll just go after them with the contact kill. They usually come out of the field, so we don't need much residual. So we need a contact kill.
What does it mean when you say a contact kill for us lay people?
Yeah, so when you have a contact kill, it's a chemical that when it makes contact, it starts to kill the animal.
Okay.
Or kill the pest.
Gotcha.
Residual is where we lay down a chemical, the pest walks across it and picks it up. So that chemical stays there, could be for a month to 3 months.
Okay.
So we don't use residual for a ant swarm. Now, termite swarm, we have to. So what we do, we use a chemical that sets there, because as the termite is coming up to feed on the house or trying to find a colony, they get to walk through my residual that is undetectable, because if it's detectable, that termite is smart enough to go the other way. So we put an undetectable residual up, they hit it, they keep crawling through it, they take it back to the colony, spread it out throughout the colony as a disease, it kills that colony off. So we use that in our chemical application and our bait stations application. So when we put bait stations around folks' homes, that's what that is doing.
That's awesome. I love it. Like I said, it takes one to know one.
I'm telling you.
You got to have the mind of a pest to defeat the pest.
You do. You have to think. If you don't think
like a
pest,
bug.
yeah, you're not gonna be successful.
Think like a bug. What is it? Flutter like a bee.
Yeah, float like a butterfly. Sing like
that
a bee.
is it. That's it.
Yep, that's me. That's how I am. I mean, that's people.
I know.
That's how they describe me.
I know. I figured. Well, that'll do it for another edition of Does It Bite? Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
What?
If you enjoyed this episode, check out more Does It Bite?